I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Now, I don't know about you, but I absolutely love wordplay. It seems like I always have folks rolling their eyes at some silly pun that tumbles out of my mouth, especially when my mind is not fully engaged. But I never realized the power of these tiniest of stories until I read Ron Plouffe's new book, The Proverb Effect: Secrets to Creating Tiny Phrases That Change the World. Ron has spent decades using the power of storytelling in business, and in fact was one of our first guests on the Business of Story just a few years ago, episode 16 to be exact, sharing how to create the pitch perfect story. But on today's show, Ron is going to show you how you can use Proverbs, these tiniest of stories, to make your point stick. You'll learn the 3 families of Proverbs and which one to choose depending on the outcome you're looking for with your storytelling. Why our minds love Proverbs, because they're based in metaphor. And what kind of finish, like conviction, rhythm and rhyme, or double use, will work best for you depending on the situation. So now, when you hear me say stuff like, storytelling is the Velcro of collaboration, or story marketing replaces adjectives and adverbs with adventures to move your audiences to action, or an anecdote is the antidote, I'm not messing around. I'm just using the storytelling powder keg of Proverbs to make an explosive impact. Wait, I think I just did it again. Well, either way, please welcome to the show, Ron Ploof. Ron, welcome back to the Business of Story. Great to have you here, good old friend.
Thanks, Park. It's great to be back. I am indeed a repeat offender.
You are. So keep offending us. You know, I saw you last time about a year and a half ago at Social Media Marketing World. We got a chance with Kathy Klote's guest to do a panel discussion on storytelling, and it was great fun.
It was a lot of fun sitting on that panel, and San Diego's just a great place to be, too.
Yeah. So you've been kind of busy since then. You've been writing a new book.
I have been writing a new book. I've been writing a new book for about 2 years, and it's finally done.
Proverb Effect: Secrets to Creating Tiny Phrases That Change the World. Now, before we jumped on the show together, we were just talking about Proverbs are those funny little things you don't hear about a lot in business. They tend to pop up on their own. They're sort of organic and meme-like in that way. And yet I suspect if, like storytelling, we become more intentional about strategically using Proverbs in all the right places, that we might have more impact on people.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that got me really interested in Proverbs was, it was a couple years ago, I wrote this blog post, and it was called When to Make a Point, Offer a Proverb, or to Tell a Parable. And so a lot of times we think of storytelling as a parable, something that it's long and it takes you a while, but sometimes you need to use storytelling, and it depends on your audience that you're speaking with or the amount of time that you have to convey something. And in this article that I wrote, I was looking at Proverbs, and I went to Ben Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac, and I was looking at some Proverbs, and like for one of them that I wrote about said, 3 may keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
3 may keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
Yes. And then I went and tried to describe what it meant. And what I found was that it took 4 times as many words to explain what the thing meant. And that's when I said, there might be something to these proverbs, the fact that they convey more meaning than the words actually used to build them. And so that's what started me on this little quest. The other thing is when you said that proverbs may not be used in business, they are used in business. But it took me a while once I figured out how to define what a proverb was. But if I start a proverb here that you've heard in business, let's see if you can finish it, right?
Okay, before you do that, Ron,
Yep.
What is the difference between a parable and a proverb?
So a parable is a story, and it's a story that takes some time to tell. And so you might have characters and you might have events and things like that happen. There might be a moral to the story. And so that's a parable. Also, the audience you can tell a parable to, it can be someone who sort of knows a little bit about the subject or someone who doesn't know about the subject. It's more of a general audience. Proverbs are the same thing, is that we understand them generally, but you don't have a lot of time. And so if you have to say something succinctly, that you will use a proverb. Making a pitch to somebody is something where you have a small amount of time, but also that person also knows a little bit about your subject, some maybe family knowledge or something like that. And so those are the differences. How much time and what about the audience and what is the appropriate method to use to communicate with them?
So a proverb is almost like a story that's in a little dynamite package, a package of TNT that you can roll out very quickly, but it has a universality to it that people understand the core story at the heart of it.
A proverb is the ultimate long story short.
Gotcha.
It's got everything in there, and it's all bound in this little tiny packet.
So give us an example of how we might see one in business.
All right, so we're going to start this proverb. Ready? When E.F. Hutton talks,
people listen.
Yeah. And that actually it's very proverbish.
Even though it's a campaign theme that's been around forever, but it's got proverbian characters to it.
There you go. Yes, proverbial or proverbish, but it has that. But think about it. That campaign is what, 20, 30 years old?
Mm-hmm.
And you remembered it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as someone who has been in this communication business for a long time, how hard is that to do? It's not easy. It's not easy. We have these old things like, you have to hit people 7 times with a message before they remember it or something. But what I believe is that if you actually start to break Proverbs down and that there are components, what I found is that there are components of Proverbs. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, has the components of a proverb. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this book, is teach people there are things that you can use, the way to structure words that make them interesting, memorable, and persuasive.
Yeah, so in that E.F. Hutton example, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, you have that alliteration going off of talk and listen. So you have this nice little play on words there, but it also is conveying a point. So I would imagine that has something to do with creating a good proverb that works?
Yeah, absolutely. I break Proverbs down into, if you think of anything that's written, you have form and function, right? That's usually when you write it down. So I like to break form down into 2 pieces, frame and finish. So a proverb has a function, a frame, and a finish. Now, a function can have 3 different ways of doing it. You can have a definition, a prediction, or prescription. So the function of when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, it's a prediction, right? And then its frame is conditional, like when E.F. Hutton speaks. So it's a conditional. If at first you don't succeed, try again. That's a conditional. And then you talked about, it has a wordplay finish to it, right? That talk and listen. The other thing is that this is an opposite finish because they're using the word talk and the word listen, opposite words. All of these things work together that within our minds, we start to infer meaning out of all of these things. And that's how Proverbs work.
So you have sounds like totally deconstructed Proverbs to figure out what actually makes them work. And it sounds like depending on what you're trying to do, either you're going to use a proverb that has a particular type of function, frame, and finish, or if you were writing a campaign theme or wanting to make a point, that you have to consider what your audience wants to do so that you use the proper proverb with the right function, frame, and finish.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have an idea, you have something that you want to convey to somebody else, and you want it short. Well, using rules to create proverbs is a way to help you get there.
Okay. So I read through your book. Thank you so much for sending it to me. And folks, it's available right now. Ron does a beautiful job of explaining and teaching on Proverbs by sharing a story. We have several stories that all come together. It's a very, very fun read. And it started blowing my mind when you got into the part about the mechanics of it and the function of it. And at one point I thought, this is simple. And then the more I dove into it, I thought, no, this is kind of complex. But then I came back to the simplicity. How did you pull them apart and then serve them up so that we can understand how to use them and how to create them?
There were two things that I stumbled upon. One of them was that there is actually a field of study of Proverbs called parameology. I had never heard the term before.
Parameology.
Parameology.
Huh.
And that is the study of Proverbs. And that there are some great works. But right now, I'd say one of the leading experts in Proverbs is a professor at the University of Vermont. His name is Wolfgang Meiter. And he actually writes an annual newsletter that they've been doing for years and years and years that actually shares all of the research that people are doing around the world in Proverbs. And so reading his things and a lot of the pointers helped me understand Proverbs and studying them. The other thing that I learned was I read a book by the name of Pennebaker, and he's another professor, and he wrote a book that The Secret Lives of Pronouns. And what was interesting about this book is that if you study, the Secret Lives of Pronouns, and what he talks about is function words. Now, function words are the little words that we really just don't think about that much, the to, a, for, the little tiny things. We usually focus on the big vocabulary words around here. And that he found that if you actually just strip away all of the descriptive words and the adjectives and things like that, and just study the function words, that you can tell a lot about the writer. You can tell whether they're depressed. You can tell whether they're lying. You can tell all these different things just by the function words that we choose to use. And he has a tool called LIWIC, which is the Linguistic Inquiry and Word Count. And so what I did is I took about 1,500 English proverbs. I ran them through LIWIC to see how they use function words. And what I found is that they specifically use function words in a very, very different way. And I know this all sounds geeky and grammatically, but it was really interesting to dive into linguistics and parameology to learn about how Proverbs work and then try to see if I can make it so that people can use it in their daily lives.
What was your greatest aha moment in your study of these Proverbs?
That the most Proverbs are based in the second person you in the present tense now. They're about you and now.
Second person you in the present tense now, which is creating an immediacy for your audience.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And that's what our brains really care about, is the immediacy. Is how can I take this information and use it now? Our brains are always focused on the present. Whether we think about it or not, they're always focused on the present. And the other thing about Proverbs is that I call it the benefit rule, is that if you think about it, there's a proverb speaker and there's a proverb listener. And the benefit is always for the listener. If I say to you, if at first you don't succeed, try again, what benefit am I getting out of it? It's really all for you. I'm giving you some feedback. I'm giving you some encouragement. I know you're going through a hard time. Keep it up. That's the way you're going to succeed. So that Proverbs, it's about, if at first you don't succeed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Try is present tense. So it's about you. It's about now, and the benefit is for you.
Mm-hmm. Where did Proverbs come from? I mean, are they just a natural meme that came out of Homo sapiens trying to survive in this world? And so they're trying to find shortcuts in communications, but that shortcuts that actually deliver a punch?
I think that it can be speculation. I don't know exactly where they came from. I don't know if I could find the very first proverb that was ever created. But what is interesting is that they are very old, and that they are cross-cultural, that Proverbs are found in every language. It doesn't matter, across time. And so maybe as we started to use this new technology called language at the time, that all of a sudden we started coming up with like little phrases that someone with experience wanted to pass on some knowledge to somebody, and we stumbled upon it, and then it stuck. But then they stay around. You remember them forever. Somehow they stick in our minds, and we recall them when we need that information in that moment.
I just wrote a proverb thinking about this because I was thinking shortcuts, and I was laughing at myself because yesterday I was just thinking about shortcuts, and this popped into my mind. Every shortcut to success I've ever taken has led me to disaster faster. So I don't know if that's a proverb or not, but you do that.
So typically Proverbs don't use the word I. That's one of the things that I found out that they are.
There you go. I just broke the rule, didn't I?
Right. But here you have the big idea. So now what we need to do is see if what we might be able to do to turn it into something that's you. It's about somebody else. And then we start to have something that's more memorable, and it works with the proverb.
So you might say every shortcut to success you take just leads to disaster faster?
Yes. What you find is that this is an editing process.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we need to do is we need to start to walk through and say, let's ask this. Do we want this to define, prescribe, or predict, right? So what's the function? And then is there a frame that we want to put around it? And then last night, is there a finish? Is there something that we want to do, making it poetic with, you mentioned like alliteration or rhyme or rhythm, or, maybe using an opposite like talk and listen.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, you have some rules now to play with, to take that idea because it's a great idea, but now we would just work with it for a while. And I bet if you start to work with it for a while, then you'll eventually get it to something that's proverbish.
Gotcha. I got you. Now, let me bounce another one off of you that I shared, I think, with you in an email. And this is one I used on our kids when they were little, teaching them how to ride their bikes and being aware of the world around them. But I've also have since used them when each of them have gone on their own little forays into the big world of Europe on their backpacking trips. And I found that it was equally powerful of both. And it's just as simple as this. I tell them to use their eyes and use their ears, guaranteed to say it, to extend their years.
Yes.
Use your eyes, use your ears, guaranteed to extend your years.
And that is absolutely a proverb. So what if we break it apart a little bit?
Okay.
So it's a function. So is it defining something, predicting something, or prescribing something?
I guess it's prescribing.
It is. It's prescriptive.
Use your eyes and use your ears.
Yeah, you're prescripting. You're trying to keep them safe. You're giving them something. It's a prescription to keep them safe. Absolutely. Okay. So now the frame. Is it a comparison or a conditional?
It's a conditional.
Meaning?
Meaning that if you don't use your eyes and use your ears, you can lead to trouble.
Okay.
So the condition is be aware, use your eyes, use your senses to keep you alive.
Awesome. And then what about a finish? What finishes are you using?
Give me the options again.
Okay. So for finishes, we've got conviction is sort of like the best, the worst, things like that. Negation. There's poetic. There's assonance, consonance, rhyme, rhythm, alliteration, and then wordplay. Association, double use, opposites, and reversals.
Oh, well, there's a lot there.
there's a lot.
Definitely poetic and wordplay. I mean, use your eyes, use your ears, guaranteed to extend your years. Yeah, the idea is to hook them with mnemonic, I think is what you call that. You know, having a little bit of alliteration and rhyme in it.
Absolutely. There's rhyme and rhythm in there. There's absolutely rhyme and rhythm in there. I also think that there's double use because you use the word use twice. Mm-hmm. So there's some double use. And so that's, as you see, we're now breaking it apart and looking at why it works. And then as we're emailing back and forth, I even said that now one of the things I love doing is then, okay, can we now make it even shorter? Mm-hmm. Right. And so when I took a look at this, that there's another technique you can call, which is called ellipsis, which is there a way that we can now suck out some of the words, right? And just make it even shorter. And so the original one is use your eyes and use your ears, guaranteed to extend your years. What if we just said something like eyes and ears to extend your years? And then it makes it shorter and rolls off the tongue, maybe even a little more rhythm and things like that.
And would you take out the action word to and just say eyes and ears, extend your years?
Another way to do that. So see, you're getting good at this.
The only thing I totally hear you about making it shorter. What I liked about it longer, at least with my boys as we were growing them up, is I got them to kind of sing it, say it, so it got stuck in their mind. And now, of course, whenever I bring it up, they just roll their eyes because they know I have just completely stuck this in their brain.
Of course you did. And the whole idea is you had a big idea that you wanted to share with them to keep them safe. Mm-hmm. And so that is the reason why you did it. So editing or making it more memorable, it depends on the situation. In your situation, this amount of words, getting them to make it, they can sing it and things like that, it works. So the whole reason was to keep them safe. And whether they want to admit it or not, it has.
I've implanted that into their brain. And I can tell you our youngest son is just coming back from 7 weeks overseas in Europe. He's flying out of Warsaw to LA right now. And by God, he survived it. So I guess he used his eyes and used his ears. That was good.
He did.
Ron, where else are you seeing this in business, or maybe something that we're all seeing? You gave us the E.F. Hutton earlier. How else are people using Proverbs to really make their points and move people to action in business?
Well, I mean, I am noticing that's the one thing is I warn people, if you read my book, you'll start to see Proverbs everywhere. It's just, it awakens you to things.
And by the way, congratulations on how you approach this book. It is a really fun read. And it puts you right in the lives of 3 primary characters, and you do a beautiful job of bringing it full circle and having all of these storylines come together while teaching us about the functions, form, framing, and all the different elements of Proverbs. So well done.
Imagine that, Park, a person who teaches storytelling by using a story to teach storytelling, right?
Yeah.
You and I have been doing this a while. All right. And I know that probably over the past 3-4 years that business and business storytelling is becoming more of a buzzword. And I think that there are a lot of people doing or jumping into story. But we've been doing this a long time. And that, to me, this is my second business fable. My first one I wrote was back in 1995. And the ability to become a better storyteller, you need to tell stories. And so it was very important when I took, if I listen back to what we just recorded earlier, right, that there's a lot of detail in there when I'm talking about the linguistic inquiry and word count, and I'm talking about, function words. There's just so much technical jargon. There had to be, for me, a better way of conveying this deeply technical stuff, but could I roll it into the lives of characters? We're storytellers, and that's what we do. And so to me, it was just a lot of fun. The other thing is that if someone ever asks you, Like, well, how can you use or how can you develop characters to be able to, well, I could walk them through and say, let me show you the decisions that I made in order to choose this character and why they did this and why they did that. So the best way to become a better storyteller is just to tell stories. And so thank you very much. But that's what I do.
It's weightlifting. You just have to get after it. And all the top athletes are always known for their work ethic. And the same is true with storytelling. You just got to keep working at it because we default back to what's easy, and that's not telling stories. But let's get back to that question about Proverbs then. They are an easy way of delivering a powerful punch in business. So let's talk a little bit about ways that you've seen them being used, or how our listeners can start using them.
So I have a couple other examples, right? One of the things that I learned was that all Proverbs are based in metaphor. All Proverbs are based in metaphor. And a lot of people misuse the word metaphor. They misuse it for like analogy or simile. That is like something. Something is like something. Or you can substitute it for something. But metaphor is actually defining one thing as something else. Ignorance is bliss, right? That you take two really weird things, but people say, oh, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. What's also interesting is it doesn't work the other way. Bliss is ignorance, right? So for some reason, just switching the words around, it doesn't work. That's the power of metaphor. So let's take, what if your business slogan was a metaphor? I mean, because if all Proverbs are based on metaphor, there's something powerful about metaphor. Imagine if you could do that. De Beers does it. Mm-hmm. Diamonds are forever. A metaphor. So it's a really short proverb, 3 words, but it's based in metaphor. Diamonds are forever.
And Ron, I've always thought of metaphor as you take 2 components to make a third more powerful meaning.
It is. Metaphor is a way that we as humans use to express big, powerful concepts that are just really hard to fathom. Mm-hmm. You know, that we've got our 5 senses, right? But then how do you explain to somebody what love is? And so we have all these different metaphors. You know, love is blind. You know, love is patient. We have all of these different things because it's such a big, big concept. Mm-hmm. When you're in love, you know it. But how do you describe it to somebody who isn't? And so metaphor is extremely powerful. So yes, when you're taking 2 ideas to make something bigger, it's even bigger than that.
My students at ASU, my executive master's program in storytelling and sustainability, I would tell them when they're preparing their PowerPoints, I said, God, you know what? PowerPoints don't kill audiences, but PowerPoints riddled with bullets kill audiences. Use your story. So maybe there's a little bit of metaphor of the PowerPoint riddled with bullets, as we've all have been subjected to.
Bullets kill people. No, they absolutely do. And that's also one of the things you also need to know is, as I was going through this book, I really thought about you a lot. So I listened to the business of story, but you are just naturally proverbish. You use
proverbish. Okay.
You're very proverbish. You are. Matter of fact, one of the very, very first things, I think when I heard you speak for the first time, one of the very first things that I remembered was use a proverb. You said a spoonful of story helps the data go down. And
Mary, Sound of Music, of course.
Well, that's a fun kind of a proverb frame that I call a derivative. We're actually basing it off something else, right? So, you know, that you use that, you came up with a prescriptive function. It's on a derivative frame. You know, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Very rhythmic. I mean, can't we just hear Julie Andrews singing that, you know? Right. And then think of the metaphor that you've used. I mean, sugar is sweet. Medicine is bitter. Story is sweet. Data is bitter. And so you use Proverbs all the time. And you just do it unconsciously. That's one of the things that, I mean, as I'm listening to Business of Story and I'm writing this book, and then, there goes Park again. He's another proverb.
Well, I wonder, though, Ron, if that is just simply comes from my training in 30 years in advertising, primarily, as a writer. I've done a lot of different things, but written, and you're always, as a writer, trying to find new ways and interesting ways to present an old idea. And so I'm wondering if that's just, I didn't even intend it, but it just comes from my copywriting days.
I believe there's a lot to that. I believe that writers, as I was going through this process and mentioning it to writers and other word nerds, people that just love the use of words, that they did it, but they were explaining to me, this is the first time they've ever seen anybody explain like why it works. Yeah. So rather than maybe just experience and you stumbling upon it, is there a way for you to put together a method to be able to sit down and help you put something like this together? And so that's
what you've done with this book, by being able to go through the frameworks and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. So do you find one particular type of proverb shows, or structure of proverb shows up more times than not? Is there a preferred one that just seems like humanity leans to? So like if we're in business, we're thinking, go after these kinds of proverbs.
No, I don't find that, because what I do find is that there are proverb families where if you take your idea, so you had come up with an idea before, and you're saying that let's make this proverbish. Is there a way to do it? Well, what you might find is that you could create a definition proverb, a prediction proverb, and a prescription proverb based around the idea. So I don't find that that one is more than the other. What I notice is that you have the ability to take the same idea but present it in 3 different ways, and that people can apply it. Like, I don't know what it is, so you need to define it. Oh, this is a problem, so I need to use it as a prescription. Or if you see the situation, that situation is going to happen, well, then it's predictive. So, but it all could be around the exact same idea.
How does a person start getting more attuned to proverbs or adding them to their arsenal in presenting big ideas in business?
So reading the Proverb Effect will help.
There you go. And where can people read that? Amazon? Do you have a website?
Amazon. Absolutely. That all of my work is done at storyhow.com.
Storyhow.com. Okay.
Storyhow.com. You'll find it. And the reason I say that, of course, I'm pushing a book here, right, but at the same time, I've tried to outline what they are. And once you start seeing them, then all of a sudden you start saying, oh, that's a proverb. And then you'll start breaking it down and saying, oh, look, wow, they're describing something, and it's on this conditional frame, and you're using alliteration. So you'll start to break it down. And what I'm hoping is that if you start thinking that way, and it's your job to try to create something or that's interesting, memorable, and persuasive in a short form, that it can help you do that.
Okay, so you've just defined someone like you and I that might really geek out over this and go, wow, that's cool. What about the person that's just like, no, I hear you. I don't want to dive into it that far, but I want to start arming myself with some proverbs that I might have some go-tos out there. How do we get the regular person out there that's not geeking out about this stuff using them?
That's a great question. There's parameology, which is the study of proverbs, and then there's parameography, which is the collection of proverbs. So I guess one of the things that they could do is there are references out there that you could go out and collect. Go and find a book. I've got a book over here that's got, it's a big fat book of proverbs, and they'll tell you their derivation and where they came from and how long they've been around and when they were first used. So maybe that's it, that if they can't come up with their own proverbs, it's always good to maybe see some of the proverbs that have survived for this many years.
Okay, so that's what I've just done. I've gone on while we were talking. I'm online. Let me throw a couple at you.
Sure.
And let us have you deconstruct them for us.
Yeah.
Take us through what they are. So the one at the very top of the list, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Okay, so absence makes the heart grow fonder. So it sounds like it is a prediction, right? So absence, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Absent makes the heart grow fonder. It's conditional, right? That, absence, that there are ways to make a heart grow fonder. So it's conditional. And absence makes the heart grow fonder. I would say that there's probably some rhythm in there. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. You can probably, that there's something like that. I would say that would probably do it.
Okay, good. Here's another one we hear often. Beggars can't be choosers.
Ah, yes. Beggars can't be choosers. I'd say that it's probably a definition, okay? It's probably a definition because you could say that beggars could be choosers, but what they did is they used negation as a finish. So they can't be choosers. So B, it's defining. So it's probably a definition. They're probably using a negation finish. And it's comparison. It's a comparison between beggars and choosers.
Yeah. So in knowing that, how is that important to us, the users of the Proverbs?
If you understand that, just as we've always talked about, there are things that stories use, that when we listen to a story, that there are things that happen inside of our brains, neurologically and biologically, that make us interested in stories. The same things are happening with Proverbs. And so if you understand that and you want to use that, that's why it's important to learn these things. And so it's not just the average person, because the average person, we might be talking about business people here, but the average person is always trying to convey meaning, is always trying to convey knowledge. Or if you're a parent, you're trying to keep them safe while they're riding their bicycles. So just trying to get a kid to listen to anything is difficult enough. So wouldn't it be good if you could actually figure out a way to use this method that has been used by the greatest communicators throughout all of time to help you communicate your big idea?
So that leads me to another proverb. Knowledge is power. Talking about metaphor.
It is. It's base metaphor. That's exactly right. So knowledge is power. That is a metaphor. And so it's the most stripped down version of a proverb that you can get. And it's only 3 words. That's one of the other things is I collected over 1,500 English proverbs, and I found that of all of them, the largest one was 129 characters, which means that they're all tweetable. So proverbs are really short.
So I've got one here that's about 30 characters.
All right.
People who live in glass houses should not throw stones.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's right. So I would say that's prescription, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to keep you from becoming embarrassing. It's conditional, right? Because you're living in glass houses. Definitely there's wordplay in terms of association. So you've got stones and glass, right? So there's definitely association going on there. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And there's a proverb out of the Bible that says something along the same lines, doesn't it? Something about...
Oh, he who without sin casts the first stone?
Yeah, there's that. And there's also pulling the board out of your eye or something like that. Good God, my Catholic upbringing has lost me, but there's playing off of that.
Yeah, you're right. There's something about you're looking at a splinter, but you're pulling a log out of your eye, or something like that.
So
yes,
it's the same type of thing.
Yes, my Catholic upbringing is failing me too.
But it really comes back to having these little bite-sized morsel stories packed in some cases just 3 words. If you could even really call them stories, but it's not so much stories as it is the moral of a story, or an insight, or even a universal rule that it seems like most people live to.
It really is. I mean, I always think that the reason you tell a story is to convey meaning, and that's why I say that it's very storyful, if you will, for Proverbs, because they're trying to convey meaning. Mm-hmm. And somehow, in a very special way, these words, independent of language, they convey more meaning than the words used to construct them.
How would you coach somebody, say they've got an initiative going internally in an organization, and on one side, they've got their boss, the CMO, who's like totally on board, but on the other side, they got their CFO that says, we're not going to spend money on that. They've got this gap that they have to bridge through the use of narrative and story. How can Proverb help someone do that?
I would definitely think about, all right, what is the big idea that we need to convey to the person who maybe doesn't see it yet? If we now have that big idea, then we can start to work on developing a proverb that might work with them. That's the other thing, is the more we know about them, maybe we find out that they're a big baseball fan, the World Series, and maybe we can somehow use a baseball analogy to and put together into a proverb so that we can convey that big idea.
So Yogi Bear is your go-to proverbian there to find some of his sayings.
Yogi Bear is very proverbial.
Yeah. It's so crowded there, nobody goes there anymore.
Exactly, yes.
But the idea, though, is to find these sort of universal connections through Proverbs that are able to unite 2 opposing views, because they do agree within a proverb. They might be looking at it through their own frame, but it is the first common ground that you can find and then bring them together on it.
Yes. If you think about, all Proverbs are based in metaphor, that it's because where metaphor comes together is our shared experiences. Mm-hmm. We all know what all know what it's like to feel sick, right? Mm-hmm. We all know what it likes to feel maybe rejected. We all know what pain feels like, or when you touch something hot. And so using words to describe those things, since they're a common thread amongst our existence as humans, that's what you build a communication on, is what do we share? Where is our common ground? And once we have that common ground, that's how you bridge the ideas between us.
Okay, so I'm going to just totally take a shot at this as I was going through the proverb list here. Bear with me, if you will.
All right.
Let's set the stage. You've got a large organization, and you've got 2 sort of warring factions, if you will, internally. Marketing is not getting along with product development, and they're trying to do their best, but they just aren't communicating. And so one of the marketing ladies come up with an idea of, at the annual meeting this year, let's spend a little bit of extra money and bring in this really hysterical stand-up comic who will be the MC for it. Let them know in advance what we're up against to see if we can't bring these 2 groups together. Her boss, the CMO, says, you know what, Sally, that is a marvelous idea. But then they run it into Sam, the CFO, and the CFO goes, you're out of your mind. Profits are down because you guys can't get along. We need to build, this motivation before we do anything. We're not going to spend an extra 10 grand for this. But she comes back, and Sally uses the proverb that becomes the foundation for her presentation is, can't we all agree that laughter is the best medicine?
There you go. Absolutely. So first of all, that's why you have a podcast called The Business of Story because they're a storyteller, right? So that's what you did. And by using that the commonality isn't laughter the best medicine, right? People get that. They understand that. And so even with your story, let's say that there was something going wrong. Maybe there was morale or something like that. Maybe they needed something that needed medicine, right? Is there a way that we can lighten it up? And so absolutely. So that's where you can, if someone doesn't want to create their own proverb, they might be able to look at a list that you're looking at right now and say that, maybe I can use that one. The other thing that you said is she used this as the foundation of her presentation. That's one of the other things that you can use Proverbs for. Proverb is both premise and conclusion. And so you can use a proverb. You can open a presentation with a proverb. You can end a presentation with a proverb. As a matter of fact, I believe that you always end this show with a proverb.
Mm-hmm.
The most potent story you will ever tell is the one you tell yourself. So you do it naturally. But with presentations, people can do that same thing. People always wonder, like, how should I open? Should I open with a joke? Should I open with, what if you actually just opened with what you want to talk about and you give that powerful proverb? Now you can start to expand upon it, use some more words to explain it. Maybe it's a family of proverbs. I said that you can take the same idea, but you can make it prescriptive, you can make it predictive, you can make it a definition. Maybe you weave those through the presentation, and then you end with one. So that is a way to build a presentation.
I think that's really fascinating what you just said there, that Proverbs are both a premise and a conclusion in one bite. I mean, laughter, there's your premise, is the best medicine. So there's your premise and your conclusion all wrapped in. And you could take that and use that as a theme for a presentation.
Absolutely.
Nothing in this presentation makes sense except in the light of the thoughts. Laughter is the best medicine. So as you're creating that presentation and filling it full of the anecdotes and the stories to make your points, you keep using this laughter to medicine analogy, metaphor.
Yep.
Boy, that's really powerful. I never thought of it that way, Ron. I'm gonna definitely use that, because you could even put that at the top of your outline and say, that is my North Star. I have to keep going back to that.
Yeah, and that's why if you start to learn about Proverbs and get better at Proverbs, and that can help you encapsulate it, now you've got I like how you said that, true north. You have that. So why not start there?
Now, just looking up, who said keep your friends close, but your enemies closer? Oh, that keep your friends close, your enemies closer. So that's Sun Tzu, I guess, out of the Art of War.
The Art of War?
That must be. But there again, okay, so there is a proverb, but that's very much of a definition, I guess, or is that a prescription?
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, prescriptive.
Yeah, prescriptive. So these things seem like they bubble up from all over the place. And I would imagine our listeners too are proverbians. They're creating their own in their own ways and having maybe not even realizing it, and even potentially casting them aside when they could really be using them and building their own archives of proverbs that certainly express their own voice, their own sentiment and character, but can be really powerful to own that boardroom or own that break room, because people really sit up and listen. And you're doing it in a unique, interesting, and quite often entertaining way.
Yeah. And then comes the next step, is when those people leave that board meeting and they go someplace else, and then they use the proverb again.
It's memorable.
They are. And it's all of these little tricks, using these little linguistic tricks and using these clever analogies and metaphor. That's what makes them so powerful. And so yes, it can help you in the moment, but then don't you want those big ideas to spread? Mm-hmm. And so you've encapsulated this big idea into something that just hooks into people's brains. There's nothing they can do about it. And that when the opportunity arises, they spout it. It's magical. It's a superpower.
That's great. A proverb is the antibiotic to jargon.
Yes, absolutely.
There you go. Ron, this has been...
And that's a proverb, by the way.
Oh, well, there you go. They just
Right?
bubble up. They come out of nowhere. This is so much fun. So let's remind our listeners where they can find and get your new book and where they can track you down and bring you in to help them with their business and brand storytelling.
Yes. So the name of the book is The Proverb Effect, Secrets to Creating Tiny Phrases That Change the World. And you can get it on Amazon.com. If you want to know more about me, you can go to storyhow.com.
Storyhow.com. And I tell you, you can digest this book in about 4 hours. It's a quick read. It's a really fun and entertaining read. And what I found with it, Ron, is I read through it and loved it. And then I went back to where you had the meatier part of all these definitions, and I highlighted it and outlined it. So I thought, okay, well, there is my learning material right there. But it was so much fun to hear it and see it in action throughout the whole book. So congratulations on making it a very fun and educational, but more importantly for me, an entertaining read. Got a ton out of it.
Thank you so much. And you can probably guess that there's another product that's coming out of this book.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if you remember, I have the StoryHow pitch deck,
Yep.
which is a deck of cards that helps you create stories. Well, I am working on a proverb pitch deck right now to help people create their own proverbs with a tool based on the book.
There sounds like there could be a whole board game there. I mean, sitting around having cocktails with your friends, coming up with your own proverbs could be a lot of fun.
Cocktails are on. Let me work on that.
No, I'll work on that one. You do what you're doing. Let me, and then I'll send it to you when I'm done.
All right, you work on that one. I'm in.
Ron, thank you so much for being here. Really great to have you back.
Thank you, Park.
And hopefully we'll see you out at Social Media Marketing World next year. I'll be back out there again in San Diego in, when is it? March, I guess.
Whenever you're in Southern California, drinks on me.
And a proverb or two, I hope.
Absolutely.
All right. And thank you all for listening to this edition of The Business of Story. If you liked what you heard from Ron today and he's got you thinking about Proverbs and you've got a colleague, a friend, a family member that would benefit from hearing Ron's insights on this little morsel of story, feel free to share this episode with them. By sharing it with your world, it expands ours, and we appreciate it greatly. And of course, if I can be of service to you, track me down. I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the power of story in your business, with your brand, and in your leadership development. Track me down at park@businessofstory.com, where you will also find on the website a ton of free tools, techniques, tips, and all kinds of insights, maybe even a proverb or two to help you grow as a storyteller. Join us next Monday when we will have another amazing story artist on like Ron. And until then, as he said, Ron, you want to go ahead and deliver the line?
Oh, your ending line.
Yes, please.
Absolutely. The most potent story you will ever tell is the one you tell yourself.
Story on, my friends. Thanks for listening.